Being the appointed hour of 9 o'clock, we'll get an open Ways and Means Committee and ask Senator Waters, our guest, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Senator Waters. I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Been moved by Senator Roosevelt, seconded by Senator Murphy to go into executive session. We are now in all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. We are now in executive session. The first bill we'll take up is Senator Ricciardi's bill, Senate Bill 635. Ask Senator Ricciardi come on up to the microphone. We have some questions. In the previous 3 years.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Gave you a little cheat sheet there.
It's this one. So you have an amendment number 596. Walk me through the big changes in the amendment and what it's doing.
Okay, the changes were addressed based on the introduction of the bill. So it made as administrative simplicity. On page 2, the process to apply for and claim the credit, as well as how it's applied against business taxes, is now aligned with existing tax credits. And on page 2, lines 4 to 6, first come, first served language mirrors existing tax credits. And then again, based on the introduction of the bill, it was a small business focus, and page 1, lines 16 to 17, allows credit for small employers with less than 50 employees and 95% of all employers in New Hampshire per NHES data. And this replaces the annual limit on the amount of credit per employer, which was intended to serve as a proxy for employer size. And then on page 1, lines 20 to 22, it would streamline credit to $300 per employee year for 2 years, making it simpler to budget for employees in the state. It replaces the $400-$200 structure. And then on page 2, lines 7 to 18, it maintains aggregate annual cap of $10 million. It allows carry forward of unused credit for 3 years and provides flexibility to maximize the value of the credit. And I know you had maybe concerns about that 10 million. We're open to making adjustments if needed. And on page 1, under the small group market guardrails, lines 23 to 24, it reinstates the requirement that an employer has not provided group health insurance coverage in the previous 3 years prior to claiming the credit. And then finally, page 1, lines 25 to 28, it would require employers who formerly offered group coverage to exceed previous contribution level by 300 to claim the credit after the 3-year exclusion period. And I hope that addresses your concerns from when we first introduced the bill.
Great. Questions from the committee. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to understand this. So if I'm a small group, but I'm a business with fewer than 50 employees, and I haven't offered insurance to my employees in 3 years, I can take a tax credit of $300 against what I was paying for their insurance more than 3 years ago, for the 2 years, consecutive 2 years prior to the 3 years when I dropped insurance.
I'm going to actually defer that to John Reynolds because I don't want to give you, I don't understand it the way you are. I have a different interpretation of that. So I would, if you don't mind, I'd like him to come up and answer that.
So John, let me give you my blush read of this, and then as you can tell me if I'm correct. What this says is if I'm a small business under 50 employees, and I've never provided health insurance for my employees, I've been open 3 years, I've never provided it. Then I choose to provide it. That if for the employees that are covered, as long as I have less than 50 employees, the employees that are covered by the health insurance that the company's providing and offering, the business can take a $300 tax credit per employee for the ones that are now covered when they had no insurance prior to that. So if you want to come up, just pull up a chair next to Senator Ricciardi. But that's my read of the bill, though, is what the intent was of the bill was to say, again, if you've never offered insurance and now you're offering insurance as a small business, we're going to give you a slight tax break because the business stepped up and offered some insurance.
Chairman Lang, for the record, John Reynolds for the National Federation of Independent Business, State Director in New Hampshire. Your understanding is correct. So it would be a $300 credit. If you're starting from scratch, right? You've never offered a health benefit to your employees before. We have lots of members who want to start doing that. You would get a $300 credit for contributions to this type of account or these types of accounts against the business enterprise tax or business profits tax, whatever's most advantageous to take it against. To Senator Rosenwald's question, the credit is just the $300 amount. The guardrails, as we call them, are to say you can't drop your group coverage, your small group coverage, and then immediately open one of these accounts to claim the credit, right? You'd have to sit out 3 years. You'd have to have if you offered insurance coverage before, you'd have to go through the 3-year exclusion period, and then your contributions to that type of account would have to be $300 per employee more than what you were providing for the insurance, and that is to really guard against this being an inducement to dropping small group coverage. It might happen anyway because it's just becoming increasingly unaffordable, but that's just to make sure that this credit doesn't erode the small group more than what's already happening naturally.
Thank you. Going back to your testimony at the public hearing, you said to us that people could buy catastrophic plans or go to what I think you meant by, you said the health clinics, I think you meant the federally qualified health clinics. And so your testimony suggested that this was an inducement to drop insurance.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Senator, and I should have been clear when I spoke in that. So I followed up in an email to you, which hopefully you received. So as it relates, no, okay, it's okay. I can talk through it very quickly. So as it relates to an ICHRA, individual coverage HRA, or a QSERA, which is qualified small employer HRA, as I testified in the previous hearing, you can use funds that are contributed to those types of arrangements for qualified medical expenses similar to an HSA, health savings account, and for insurance premiums. But if you use it for insurance premiums, it has to be for minimal essential coverage. So a ACA compliant individual market plan, which could include, I think you mentioned this, could include catastrophic coverage for somebody under 30. That counts as minimal essential coverage under the HRA, which I just wasn't clicking for me when you mentioned that. I'm sorry. And then there are certain types of Medicare plans that can qualify, but those are sort of odder arrangements for people in their 60s that don't really come into play. But individual market ACA compliant plans. What I was referring to by primary care were direct primary care arrangements, which don't qualify for reimbursement through these types of HRAs. What I was suggesting is if somebody chose to use their own money, right, to join a direct primary care arrangement, they could do that and then use the HRA to cover whatever else qualifies as qualified medical expense, right? But they would pay, out of their own pocket for the direct primary care if they chose not to use the HRA funds to purchase insurance, which would be their choice because it's employee directed how it's spent.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Are you aware that the individual market plans on the exchange increased in New Hampshire an average of 114% this January? And the enhanced tax subsidies expired.
Yeah, Senator Rosenwald, I thank you. It's a good question. So I think the average premium increase that someone's going to experience is going to vary by what they previously qualified for. And I'm not sure it would be about the 100 or 114% number, possibly, right? If your enhanced premium tax credit expired, what this would do for those people, right, is help backfill that. And also small group market premiums also went up, and if the individual market average increase, I think, was around 20% on average, just the straight premium, not factoring in the loss of enhanced premium tax credits. The small group, what we're hearing in the small group market is 15 to 30% increases, right? So everything is going up for a host of reasons that are the chairman probably doesn't want me to go into. So the idea is we want to backfill, right, that.
Another question? Go ahead.
Thank you.
And are you aware that in 2022, which was the most recent data I could get, the average out-of-pocket health care cost in New Hampshire was $1,400. So what is $300 really going to help if 4 years ago the average out-of-pocket cost was $1,400?
Yeah, Senator Rosenwald, thank you. The $300 is really meant to offset startup costs and initial contributions. It's not meant to be the contribution level. I think the challenge is finding what's the right credit level that doesn't set too high a threshold for a small employer to continue this type of program in the future. So, I think very few people are going to start this and say, oh, I'll just start offering $300 per employee. No, because they want it to be an inducement for somebody to stay or come to their company, right? So whether it's, $800 a year, or $1,000 a year, or $1,200 a year, this is meant to offset the startup costs, right? Because there's a startup cost associated with opening these accounts, and then offset the initial contributions and allow the small employer to make it sustainable going forward, right? And hopefully gradually increasing the contributions as premiums and healthcare costs naturally continue to rise. So it's not our goal to say, oh, just offer 300, right? It's just intended to maximize flexibility for the small employer.
Senator Murphy?
Thank you. I have two concerns about the amendment that I want to run past you for feedback. One of them is, if you have an existing small business owner who has struggled and worked really hard and made it possible to actually reach and grab that health insurance, he's done all the right things. He's left out. He can't get it. But somebody who hasn't scrimped and saved and worked and gone through the extra mile to get health insurance for his employees, they can get it. So I'm not sure that that's fair from my perspective. But the second one is in line 16, it's fewer than 50 employees. And 50 employees is very vague. I would rather see something that maybe ties into the federal definition of 50 employees, because that's the ACA limit. Is it 50 part-time and full-time? Is it seasonal? Is it the average? What if a place has 100 employees in the winter and then 20 in the summer? It's really, that's the real world and how businesses operate. And I don't know. I just rather see some really firm language around that.
Sure. To your first point,
Yeah.
Good question, Senator Murphy. Thank you. The door would still be open, right, to an employer who previously offered health insurance, right? It's just after that exclusion period, that's when you could claim the credit. So in that situation, if you offered health, and this is something we're sensitive to because we hear it from our members, and I'm sure maybe you've experienced it personally. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I have to go testify to my bill, so I'm going to have to run. I'll be back.
Thank you, Senator
I'll
Sharp.
be back. Thank you.
We're very sensitive to that concern. It's just trying to strike a balance. So you could say if you have no choice but to drop it because it's just drop small group coverage because it's no longer financially viable for your business, right? The exclusion period would apply, but after that you could claim the credit. So you would be on equal footing, right? You could claim it after the exclusion period, and there's nothing saying what you have to contribute, prior to the exclusion period ending to those types of accounts. So we did want to leave the door open, but as I'm sure I think it's 2/3 of small businesses in New Hampshire can't afford to offer health insurance right now because the small group market's just out of reach. So I agree.
Very expensive.
And then 50 employees. Sorry. Agree that we just needed a range, right? Just an applicability range. But I think 50 full-time employees, I would defer to the department of how they would interpret that, I guess. Whether it's 50 full-time employees or 50 employees in total. But sensitive to also the, seasonal fluctuation, and would be, open to ideas.
We can call the agency up to DRA and ask them questions. Again, in the bill, I think the one thing committee needs to remember is this is only a 2-year credit, right? So again, I think the intent of this bill is startups, a lot around startups or businesses that have recently started up that may not be providing function, because the credit's only good for 2 years. The maximum credit value per business is $14,700. If you had 49 employees, maximum fewer than 50, 49 employees at $300 an employee, it's a $14,700 tax credit that would be applied to you. We can ask the agency about the 50 employee argument. I'm guessing it's going to be based on bet. When you look at the bet tax, you have report how many employees and how much your salaries were, and that's what your calculation is from. So I'm betting it's because this applies to the bet tax. That's where they're going to determine if you have 50 or fewer employees. So, Senator,
Thank you. Given the potential $10 million hit on the budget, if this gets fully subscribed in the first year, and we're already in deficit, do you have any sense of, when hearing $14,900 on a business, do you have any sense of how much uptake there would be? And if so, can we cut the 10 million down?
Thank you, Senator Waters. I think that's a great question. So the $10 million was added to the bill just before we got our arms around what the total cost might be. So we're open, we're flexible, and based on, so similar proposals are advancing in other states as well. The governor of Connecticut just just proposed a similar ICRA QSERA type tax credit in his supplemental budget, and he set it at $5 million. Ohio is the only state that's proposed one that I've seen, like a fully developed fiscal note, and based on their fiscal note and how they estimated utilization, they estimated at $17 million a year in Ohio, but we have about 1/6 the number of businesses that would qualify for this in New Hampshire. So, 3 to 5 million probably is, I think, a realistic estimate of what this could cost per year based on the Ohio fiscal note.
And just if I may follow
Follow
up, we're in the budget, we're in a current budget, and this is 2026. Would it do severe damage to New Hampshire small business to have an effective date of July 1st, 2027, so we could plan for this in the next budget?
Senator, great question. I believe that the effective date, and I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the underlying bill,
26.
but I believe it applies to tax years. I believe it.
Okay, so what? Okay, all right, so that would get us into this budget.
Yeah, thank you.
further discussion? Seeing none. Thank you. We'll ask DRA to come up. Being sensitive, the tax credit is, as I've always said before, tax credit is nothing more than spending in another form, right? And so I'm hesitant on the 10 million, but I am willing to move something forward. I'd be willing to move something forward at a much less amount. The numbers it works out to be, if we had 10 million at the maximum credit, you'd have 780 businesses. At 5 million, it's 340 businesses, and at 2.5 million, it's 170. I would, because this is a rolling number, because remember, you're only eligible for the credit for 2 years, right? So it's a rolling number. In the third year, business isn't eligible for this credit anymore, and to be a new business, that would step up. And so I'm hesitant at the 10 million. I'm thinking more of a 2.5 million, and we can do it as.
I would think you could even say a range and let it go to joint fiscal if the business uptake. I think I would, obviously just hear our exec, but there's so much going on. There are other tax credit bills that are going to be in front of us, and I think if it's like past table and then we try to figure it all out.
Well, again,
Together, because we're on finance.
This is going to go to finance, so it's an FN bill. It's why we're executing it. It's going to go to finance. I think as a policy, it's a good idea to help small businesses pick up insurance if they can and give them a break if they can. I think it's a good policy issue given our workforce. And so on its face, I do think $10 million too big of a price tag to pay. So that's just my general opinion. I
I'd
would
be more
pass this at
comfortable. We had a-
2.5 and send it to finance and let
If we had,
finance.
if it looks like there's a pot of money in tax credits, there's gonna be a lot of choices, because we have several bills, and what is really gonna do the most to actually, produce the results, if this is really gonna help small businesses get more insurance for employees and protect and expand, if we can be convinced of it, but then there's gonna be another one with childcare, which is important too, so I just.
Again,
just
both
the
these will
caution.
plan on going to finance
Yeah,
and not
just
be waived.
a word of caution, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion.
Thank you. Because the applicability doesn't even take place really until 2028, I think that appropriate time for this bill is to bring it up next year so it can be considered as part of the budget. I mean, maybe
Further-
next year is going to be great.
Maybe.
Further discussion. Can you answer the 50 employee question?
Yes, Senator, for the record, Jennifer Ramsey from the Department of Revenue Administration. There is a definition of employee in the BET tax statute, which defaults to the Internal Revenue Code definition of employee. And there's additional provision in the BET statute that says there's an additional condition that an employee includes anybody that you have to withhold for. So a very part-time or very seasonal employee might not qualify as an employee under the statute, but we would default to the definition of employee for this.
If I may ask, would you be more comfortable if in statute it referenced reference that statute in terms of definitions, or is that something you will do in rules?
We probably would just continue to use the definition that's already in statute, but making it clear, because this applies both to BET and BPT, making it clear in this statute that that's the definition that applies would be helpful, as well as if there's a different definition intended, making that clear, because that's also an option for you.
I think that'd be helpful too, Mr. Chairman. If we could, if it's committee matter or whatever, is to reference the statute that gives the definition of employees, so that it's here. They'll do it in rulemaking, but if there's some
Right.
clarity here.
So I think we referenced 77A and 77E in the next paragraph in line 20 already, which is the BET and the BBT, which is what the tax credit would be designed against, which already has a definition of employee in it. So I don't know that, I'm always concerned when we start creating definitions in multiple statutes that
Well,
then
just
become
reference- just be by-
inconsistent.
Just be by reference.
Yeah.
But do you think do you have this?
I believe so. You're looking at the amendment that ends 596S.
Well, or is it as introduced?
On line 20 in the amendment, it talks about 77A and 77E, which is our BET, BPT codes.
I also have the as introduced version, Senator.
Is that the definition of
On line,
employee?
it's also, right, it's also in line 18 where it also talks about the definition. So I'm concerned, I don't want to, I would not want to add a definition of what employee is here when we have the definition in other statutes that the tax is applicable to. And that would give them credit to.
So I guess what I'm trying to ask is 77A or 77DE, it talks about the business tax liability, but it may not, that's the qualified taxpayer, not the employee. It's
But
defined
under the-
here, or is the employee
Under the
defined in that?
BET, if I heard what she said, under the BET statute, there is a definition of employee.
Correct.
And that could just be referenced. It could be just,
Well,
it could be, where the 50 is to say as the fewer than 50 employees as defined in, and then put the statute there.
Well,
You see on line 16, fewer than 50 employees as defined in, whatever. But
we could, I think it already, by the last line of that same paragraph, where you say that we reference the statute. and what qualifies.
For the,
Senator Murphy?
for the employer.
To an employer, the definition of a small employer or a large employer, they're instinctually are going to go to the federal definition
Okay.
contained in the
Right,
ACA.
right,
Well, I'm not saying not necessarily.
yeah.
Not the same thing as what she's talking about. The ACA makes every employer basically go through a math calculation every year. Are they required to provide health insurance or not? And if they're not, they're a small business. They're a small employer. And so to me, I would reference that, but because that's what the people who would use this credit are actually going to think of. We're going to advertise a small business tax credit, but we're not going to use the terminology they're used to using, because to them, a small business is somebody who's not required to offer health insurance. And isn't that the whole point? Where you don't have to offer health insurance, but you can, and you want to induce them to do it. That's, I would change it to reference the ACA, but that's up to the committee.
Further discussion. The reason I think the reason is we're not using ACA is because we're actually referencing the credit, not the insurance plan. If you offer insurance, it's not under any terms or conditions of the federal government, but if you offer insurance, we're going to offer you a credit. And that's the reason why we're using the BET credit for an employee for the purposes of who's a qualified taxpayer. It's not small business, because I think if that under small business, part-time employees under 32 hours don't qualify. There's some other issues around that. So this is full-time or part-time based on the bet.
But just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, if I may, but even those hours, even those part-time hours under the ACA, they all get added up and divided,
Cumulative, yeah.
and they factor into whether you're considered a small employer or not.
So,
But yeah, okay.
Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but I still think that lines 25 to 28 are very unclear, because it talks about the amount provided in the last benefit year prior to the first year in which the credit was claimed.
Okay.
And that had to be 3 years previously. So I do not see in here that the employer has to offer insurance. You had to more than 3 years ago, but I just, a plain reading of it, I don't see that you have to be offering insurance.
It's not my understanding that you do have to, and I'm sure that John will have thoughts.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald, committee members. I guess maybe the easier way to think about this, right, is there's a couple of ways into the credit, right? And for most of our members and most small businesses in New Hampshire, they don't offer insurance coverage now, right? The small group market is defined as 1 to 50 employees. 2/3 of small employers don't offer health insurance now because it's not affordable. So they're starting from zero, right? So their way into the credit is they also begin offering an ICRA or QSERA. They contribute at least $300. Like I said before, I think it's going to be more, because they're not going to go through the trouble of starting this if it's not at a level that's attractive to their employees or to recruit employees. So you go from 0 to 300, you qualify for the credit. Or if you previously offered health insurance to your employees through the small group, well, in this case, it would have to be through the small group market, and you were no longer able to afford to do that, you would go through the 3-year exclusion period, and then you could claim the credit if your contributions exceeded your previous benefit year contributions by $300. Does that help, I hope?
So you're saying that an employer could get a tax credit for paying $300 towards the $11,000 average per capita cost of healthcare in New Hampshire and get a tax credit
Per employee, yes.
per employee.
Yes, because it's intended to cover startup costs and help defray some initial contributions, but it's not intended to be the entire contribution. And ICRAs and QSERAs have federal rules that allow varying contributions based on family size and other factors, including age, which is also one of the attractive features to our members, right? You can vary contributions by up to 3. for between older and younger people to help, say, families or people in their 50s who face higher premiums. So there's a lot of really attractive features to it to help people meet the need, right? $300 is just intended to offset startup costs and initial credit, to the chairman's point.
Any further discussion? See none. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next bill. We're not going to take a motion at this point. We'll just have the discussion, and then we'll exec at the end of the.
Senator Lang, I apologize. Can I mention one other matter for the committee's consideration with respect to 635? And that is that we had requested at one point that this needed a $40,000 appropriation in the same way that the next bill you may be getting ready to take up has one. Depending upon how many credits pass through the session, it might be that some of the costs to administer and to upgrade the systems might be duplicative, and we would work to with the legislature and the governor's office to arrive at the smaller amount of appropriation that would be needed to upgrade the system based on all of the credits. But for now, we've got a cost quoted to us by our vendor of $40,000 to upgrade systems anytime we're having to create a new application process for a new credit. So I would just mention that that's not currently in the amendment, and it would be helpful to have that in order to actually implement the bill if it passes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Thank you. Moving on to Senator Sullivan's bill. We have Senate Bill 654.
Yep, and there's an amendment, and I did meet with Jennifer from the DRA, and we've made some changes to it. Intent of the bill remains the same. And there, on the amendment, there are a couple of errors that we still have to fix. So on line 13, you'll see that there's a line crossed out there. And on the second page, on line 22, instead of on-site, it should be on-site. So just a few errors. The first one is line 13, where it says into the next fiscal year. That should be just crossed out, be carried forward for up to 4 years. And on the second page, line 22, it says on side, and that should say on site childcare tax credit. Does anybody need it? Because I have 3 copies here somehow.
Questions? Yep.
So Senator Sullivan, I'm so cautious with money. It's not gonna be. I really wondered on this one. Your main purpose here seems to be the child care, and I think this is a great concept of incentive. I know there's not many that do it now, but it really is. A lot of employers certainly must be looking at this, so it's a good idea. Because child care is such a huge issue, and if it's where you're working, all the better. But I just wonder whether it might be reasonable to cut on page 2, that section about the tax credit, the health care. And, if that section, lines 15 to 23 were gone, I think it becomes much cleaner and much simpler, because then it's really about an employer providing some child care.
And thank you for the question. So the second part of this bill is to incentivize businesses who have part-time employees to work around school hours, so parents aren't having to, that have children in school, especially elementary school, aren't having to drop their children off at 7 in.the morning, then drive to work, get out of work, get childcare after school to watch the children. So this gives more families the opportunity to work around school hours and have more parents be taking care of their kids before school and after school, and also providing health care for those part-time employees.
Well, as I hear what you're saying, I just think sometimes one step at a time goes a long way. And the healthcare side of it, I think it'd be simpler, and also the cost consequences. Because as we had discussed in the last bill, we've got to put these all in a hopper and figure out. We're in deficit, so what is the essential thing we could maybe do? That's all.
So from the way that it reflects on the childcare aspect is you're eliminating the need for parents to have childcare before school and after school. those programs often fill up fast. But Senator, when my kids were in elementary school, I watched kids get dropped off at 7:30 in the morning and not get picked up until sometimes 6:30 at night. And they're having longer work days than their parents are. So if we could incentivize around parents, around school hours, I think that it goes a long way for healthier kids and families in New Hampshire.
Senator Heisel.
Thank you. Thank you for this amendment. Trying to figure out what the nexus is between incentivizing employers to offer part-time work and this healthcare credit, which up to $10,000 per year at 20% of the healthcare benefit assumes that health insurance costs $50,000 per year. Certainly for a younger person, it doesn't. And actually, the average in the small group market in New Hampshire in 2023 was $7,000 per year. So I guess I'm agreeing with Senator Waters that the healthcare tax credit part seems like the odd man out here.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you. Senator Sullivan, I've talked to you about my concerns with the bill. But just for the record, I think a tax credit that was extended to employers to cover the cost of healthcare, providing healthcare or some portion of it, would be great. It'd be a very simple bill, straightforward, a paragraph. I think that the first part is unnecessarily prescriptive, so it covers, line 10 through 12, right? You're extending a credit as long as the childcare is in the same building or in the same office park or industrial park. But if it's across the street, it wouldn't qualify. Or 2 blocks away, it wouldn't qualify. And that, I think, again, is unnecessarily prescriptive. But then on page 2, 18 to 20, it treats parents differently based on when they work. And maybe it's a bias that I have. In my industry, it's very common for parents to work, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And how is that different? Again, people are dropping their kids off before school. Maybe the kids are getting to school, an hour or two later. But then after school, they've got to make arrangements for someone to pick them up. Maybe not a relative. Maybe it's a paid childcare worker. And they've got to pick up the kid from school, take them to their house, and then watch the kid until the mom or dad gets home at 10:30. And so I don't like the idea of treating parents differently based on what their hours are working.
So if a parent is working and there's after school hours, then they have the ability to arrange that. I'm looking at parents that have to have the time to drop kids off at school and have to have the time to pick them up after school. So if you look at a parent that's working outside of those hours, that's not a consideration for them. So if they're working the second shift, they're able to get their child to school and then get to work. You know what I'm saying? Like this is for parents that have to drop off in the morning. And then in many cases, they have to drop off their kids an hour or 2 hours before school, whenever childcare starts, and then put them in an after-school program to get there to pick them up.
I understand that. My point is, I don't see how that's more of a burden than what's done by people who work at night.
You are more than welcome to add something for those families, but this came from me watching small children in elementary school being dropped off first thing in the morning, staying there until 6 o'clock, 6:30 at night, what it does to them, the stressors on them, the stresses on the parents. And they are working a longer day than their parents are. And it's also, there's only so many spaces in those before school and after school programs as well. To your other point, Senator, the crux of the bill is to have on-site or in the vicinity for childcare. So parents can have lunch with their children. So mothers that are going back to work can nurse their child. So if you don't have some kind of criteria around that, it could be, 40 miles away, right? So you have to have some criteria that keeps the children and the families close together.
Could we say, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have a conversation.
Nope, have a conversation.
Could we say within a half mile?
You're killing me, Smalls.
Like, if it's
So-
across the street, it doesn't qualify. But if it's in the same office park, which in some cases is much further than across the street, it does.
Would that help you get this across the finish line?
Well, it would certainly solve my concern for number one, but number two would still be. I never disagree with you. Rarely do I disagree with you. Never
Well,
say
there's been, when we do though, they're good ones.
that. Well,
You get the Irish
it's the
going
Irish
at each
temper.
other.
Further discussion on Senate Bill 654.
I would,
Senator Waters.
sorry, I was gonna say, I would concede if we wanted to put some half-mile parameter around it, something that's close by. I think it makes it less convenient for the parents, though.
Senator Waters.
I mean, obviously, I'm a sub, but I was wondering is there a limit to the total amount of the tax credit, or is there?
Yeah,
It's in the line
Where
eight.
is it?
That's $100,000 per fiscal year for the employer.
Per employer, but what if they're? is that the
And there's
total?
an
Five
aggregate
million.
of $10 million, $5 million.
$5 million.
Where's the 5 million?
It's on line 9 of page 2.
and it would begin the next fiscal year.
I guess I don't have a version that has.
Thank you.
Yes, the original one didn't have that. That was some of the concerns I expressed.
All right, I see it now. Thank you. Well,
It's-
same concern. We're in deficit, so what's reasonable to get maybe something start, there's how many on-site and private employers? Timberland, I guess, but who else? I know some of the hospitals do, but they're not
They don't
profit.
do Yeah.
Senator Reagan.
Well, I was just going to say, as someone who nursed 2 children, I also nurse them at night. So, to Senator Murphy's point, if I were working in a restaurant, I'd like to be able to be close to them to the same extent as if I was working at Fidelity.
Right. So that part, the business can have the hours of childcare anytime they want. Anytime they want. It's just if they have it between 9 and 3 for the drop-offs for school, the hours, not the childcare, just the working hours are between the school hours, then then they get the credit for that. But they can have childcare around the clock if they want to do
I'm
this.
sorry,
Good.
I wasn't clear. If I were working in a restaurant and needed to take my child somewhere, I would need that travel time, even if it was in the evening, as I would have needed it in the morning. If I was a nurse working second or third shift. So I agree with Senator Murphy that those parent hours seem to speak to just certain employees and not others. Thank you.
So again, my opinion, I understand what you're trying to do, right? So this is a workforce bill to a certain extent, right? So it's during the daytime hours, not the night hours, not the midnight shift. This is strictly a daytime hours workforce bill to try to get those moms that are stuck at home, right? To be able to, if an employer is willing to work part hours.
We didn't all consider it being stuck at home, Senator, just
I
so you know.
apologize. I had 4 kids. Sometimes I felt like I was stuck at home. But the idea of allowing them to go out into the workforce and increase that daytime workforce within the constraints that they have, whether it's because they have children who are in school and they've got to do the back and forth. So I get that this isn't an equal, it's not talking about second shift. It's not talking about third shift or first shift. It's talking strictly about daytime, day shift. And I think that's the goal of the bill, was to improve for our businesses, to provide a workforce that currently doesn't work very well.
And we heard, unfortunately, a lot of times in education, we hear bills that are about providing a place for children to be so that parents can go to work, which isn't what education should be, but that's what the all-day kindergarten was about. We heard that from businesses and the Chamber of Commerce over and over again. We're losing the sight of how we need to have healthy families and children in the state. And we have a mental health crisis around kids. And putting them in a building from 7 a.m. till 6 at night is not healthy for them. They need to be out playing. They need to be with their family. They need to be doing things. This also contributes to driving in and out of fast food, not having dinner together as a family, right? We've created this as a society. This is a step to get those moms and dads who have children in elementary school who are able to spend more time with them and have a more solid family environment that's healthier for the kids while contributing to their home finances, because things are tough right now for families. I mean, when I was a stay-at-home mom, my husband worked 2 jobs and we sacrificed a lot, but we weren't paying $20,000 for a used car. Like, I don't know how families are doing it right now. I bought I bought an old Lincoln for $3,500 cash, right? That's not the life that young families are up against right now. And if they need to contribute, how do we do it in a way that protects their children and their families at the same time? And that's the intention of this
Yeah, so
bill.
I'm saying we just need to.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a thought. You know, I did a tax incentive program around career technical ed centers and saw it in a way at the start as a challenge that if we establish this, it'd be a challenge to them to get busy, raise the tax, you know, get the contributions, form the partnerships, and you prove you can do it, and then they did, and it just that's what we you know, now have renewed it twice for 5 years. So, I mean, and given, as I said, you know, just there's one employer right now, and I think you're absolutely right, this is a good idea. What if you considered as a pilot, $100,000 a business, up to 5 businesses in the next couple of years, and the understanding being that if it's successful, you're gonna have a whole lot of people coming in here and lobbying to put more money into it and show it works. So I think there'd be a way to really get this out of the gates, but if there was that kind of limitation on it, so we could see if anybody actually would do it, then we would control the costs. And I think that it's as a way to kind of get started and see if some businesses are ready to step up.
Thank you. I'm one vote on this committee, but everything that we're hearing from our constituents is about affordability and about childcare and health costs, and this bill speaks to everything that we're hearing from them, without raising property taxes, right? So I understand what you're saying, and in a different time where there wasn't a crisis around childcare, we could take smaller steps. But I think this is something that's really important for what's happening in our state right now.
I agree with everything you say. I'm just saying, we don't really know if the businesses will do it.
Right.
And there's a way to find that out by having it as a, you know, to step it up. And we can step up things pretty quickly, as you know. If something is really working, you have some large businesses coming in saying, this is great for us, and now, you know, put serious money into it. But I mean, you already have $100,000 limit per one, and I don't think we're going to see 50 businesses come forward over the next year.
Be
or so.
great though, wouldn't it?
It would be great, but I, you know, I'm not sure there's enough tax incentive. If they were going to do it anyways, they would have done it in a way. I mean, this helps, but it's a big
Further
decision
discussion.
anyway.
Seeing no, Senator Roosevelt.
Just, we could incentivize businesses to set up childcare centers until the cows come home. But until we have a childcare workforce, they won't open. And that concerns me. We yesterday took a step in finance, maybe baby step, towards building up that workforce. But it's so low paid. It's we're under capacity by thousands of slots because we don't have the childcare teachers.
So the other thing I'll say is I do know that in at least in the manufacturing world, when I was a CIO for a manufacturing company, is that they routinely pay for training for programs. Whether it's the company I worked at needed CNC and needed employees who understood math to be able to run these machines, and they would pay for community college for people to go and get the classes. They hire them and then let them go to the
it's true.
classes.
It's true.
And so it's not an uncommon practice for a business that might want to open up, whether it's a child care service, to offer that as a way of getting qualified employees themselves if they had cash to be able to do that and they saw the business benefit of it. So I'm just saying it wouldn't be an uncommon occurrence for a business to step up that chose to choose Senator Sullivan's program that she's defined here and say, and we'll find somebody and get them trained to do it and give them the however many classes it is to be a certified child care workforce employee. So that's not an uncommon occurrence in the industry to have an employer stand up and train people for a program they're developing. So just for what that's worth. Let's move on to the next bill, unless we have more discussions on this one. 561. So there's a lot of, but how do I start on this bill? So this bill is relative to the 5 applicants that were in the moratorium, that was grandfathered in under the moratorium. 2 of those applicants have already signed ground leases and done work. 2 of the applicants, well, one's open, one's signed a ground lease, 2 have been denied, and nobody knows who the 5th one is because I can't ask lottery, they can't tell me. And so, because the application process is protected. And so my understanding of this bill is that nobody who's subject to it wants it. Would want this bill. I was originally going to work it. There is a licensee that was interested in moving, but we were unable to come to an agreement. It's a highly regulated industry. So one of the concerns, one of the deals with this industry is you can't move the license without legislative authority. And so they would have to be granted, our current licensees would have to be granted legislative authority to move the license. But they're not asking for that right now either. At least we can't come to a consensus on what they're asking for. So my recommendation is ITL on this bill. I'm not going to make that motion. I'll let us open it up for discussion first, and then we'll go from there.
I just want to be clear that the bill, as the amendment that was brought in, I believe in my absence, only allows applicants to move while the application is pending. Where once the license is granted, once they're in operation, once everything's moving, they can't move. So it only applies to those people that have an application pending, and the amendment limits where they can move to, which is why we didn't see significant opposition from the industry, because we all know that people in this industry tend to like their little kingdoms, right? And they don't want another king moving next door. So the amendment specifically limited them to the same region. Maybe no one uses it, and maybe they don't. Maybe someone in Belmont uses it. Maybe someone in Littleton uses it. Probably not. If they don't, then there's no harm done.
Well, again,
It just gives them the option to do it if they wish.
is this, you're talking about your amendment 191?
I believe that was the one. Again, I wasn't here for the hearing. It was introduced by Mr. Bossi in my absence.
Senator Lang,
91.
Yes.
how long does the application process take?
It could take a year or two because there's huge backgrounds that are done, financial backgrounds that are done. So it can take a while. But again, the amendment, the language that's in the amendment is about the people who have applied between January 1 of 23 and October 15th of 23, which are 5 applicants.
And only 2 were granted,
2 were granted.
and one we don't know about.
And 1 we don't know about. 2 are denied, 2 are granted. The 2 that were granted have no interest in moving. The 2 that were denied can't move because they weren't allowed a
So
license.
there's one pending?
There's 1 pending, and they have not stepped forward. They have not asked for a single thing. Nobody even knows who it is except the lottery. So I don't know where that stands. But that applicant, I've had conversations with the industry themselves. No, they don't know who this applicant is. And none of them are the applicant for opening another casino anywhere in the state that are subject to that number. So I just don't know what value it brings at all.
So currently in the 1 or 2 year process, if something happens during the process of the piece of land that they had intended to use, the facility is no longer available, what happens? Do they have to start the process over?
So in the first case, it's open already. So the licensee is in operation. It was Salem, right? So one of the applicants was Salem, and Salem is open now, right? They're running their operation already. The second applicant is in Littleton. They've already signed a ground lease. They're moving forward. They're actually, looks like they might purchase all the land. They signed a ground lease, and then there was an opportunity to purchase the land, and they're looking at buying that land along with a couple other slots next to the land. So again, that operator has no interest in moving from Littleton. They've established a ground lease already, and now they may purchase the property to boot on top of it rather than the ground lease, which allowed for provisions of purchase. So they have no interest in moving. And then the other 2 are denied licenses, so they can't move because they don't have a license anymore. It's been denied. And it's been appealed and denied again. So there's no opportunity there. And then there's the 5th applicant, which is that this would apply to, that nobody knows and nobody's asking for.
Everything you've said regarding the applicants is completely true, and I don't disagree with any of it. That's all completely accurate.
Mhm.
But in the case of the gentleman in Littleton, he doesn't have the opportunity to move even if he wished.
Correct. That's true of all licensees.
Right, even the ones who are still pending. And so all this does is give them they can't even consider it as an option unless we pass the bill. It isn't even a possibility. And if they haven't begun construction and they haven't actually begun hiring employees and they haven't begun ordering the stuff, then I guess I'm asking, what's the harm in it?
Thank you. I think the harm is that we are not treating all of the licensees in the state the same, that we're separating out 2 from 15. And we've talked about this.
You and I are both agree on that,
We
Senator.
do.
Unfortunately, again, this is specifically language that was carefully parsed in order to mollify
One
kings.
licensee.
Kings. No, not well. You see this as it actually isn't to mollify any licensees,
Because they don't want to move.
but it's carefully crafted to not attract industry opposition.
But the other
Why
thing
no
that
one testified against it at the hearing.
the other thing that strikes me as odd about it is that you can only move north. You can't move east or west. And
Would you like to propose a committee amendment?
well,
Same
I mean,
licenses.
I understand why the current operators don't want someone moving into their catchment area. But
More politely put than I did.
I just, thank you.
I understand. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Warner is just
Sure.
she would like to say something.
Come on up,
That's-
take the microphone and hit the
That's
button.
the question before that, just,
You have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
One second, Doctor. Senator Waters.
so, to your point, Senator Murphy, but Middleton, obviously. Let's say this passes, and they don't want to move. They don't have to move.
That's correct.
Right.
It does not obligate anyone to do anything.
Just a point of information, Dr. Warner from Littleton. They can move laterally in an abutting county, east or west. They can move more northernly. It has to be the same latitude in the next county. We didn't want to allow a rush to the southern border, which is a highly protected kingdom there. So that's why. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right, so we're going to take a 15-minute break. And we'll come back here at 10:45.
And I've got a scooter to about 11, just to let you know.
We're going to come back and start making motions.
And then you'd be glad to be that I was gone, right? He didn't- he was thinking it, but he didn't say it, okay?
Not at all. I wasn't even thinking it, Dave. So thank you. We'll be in recess until 10:45. All right, we'll come back into, at a recess. And I will take a motion on, I recognize Senator Sullivan for a motion on Senate Bill 654.
Thank you. I will make a motion of ought to pass.
With a motion about a pass, I recognize Senator Sullivan for the introduction of an amendment.
I'd like to introduce amendment number 2026-0789S.
The 654.
And we discussed this previously, the changes that are on it. I believe that we're going to make some,
So the first order of business is your red line changes. Those are the easy ones. So part of a committee amendment would be to accept the red line changes you have on your amendment.
on lines 13 and 22.
Line 13 on page 1 and line 22 on page 2.
Yes.
It's open for further amendment to the amendment. I think on line, there's a couple changes. Number one, I'd like to make the first change of the gross amount from $5 million on page 2, line 9, and cut that down to $2.5 million.
I agree.
And then Senator Murphy, you had a couple also recommended changes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I recommended on line 8, deleting the word running and adding operating or contracting.
Okay.
And then on line 16,
I'm sorry, is this in the amendment?
it is in the amendment,
So it's going to be a committee
0789.
amendment with all these changes. Will be the motion.
That was on page 1, line 8, Senator.
And then
So
on,
would you repeat that?
yes, line 8, deleting the word running. And we're going to add operating or contracting. And then on line 16, it should read, quote, if it closes an on-site childcare facility. And then, Mr. Chairman, you made a note on where to add that quarter mile line.
Yep. So again, on line 16, it's basically we want to, if it's an on-site premise, on-premise closure versus a contracted some other business that they have no control over closes. And then on line 12 at the very end, instead of the period, we're going to put a comma and just add or within 1 mile of the above.
Nope.
I'm sorry, 1/4 mile of the above. Sorry. So again, it doesn't have to be in the industrial park. If it's within 1/4 mile of the industrial park, that would be an acceptable. So it allows for a little more breadth outside of an industrial zone where childcare may not be allowed.
Can I just clarify?
I'll give you all the changes.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to run through real quick to make sure everybody got them. We'll go through in the order of the amendment. So again, on amendment 789, which is a wipe and replace amendment, on line number 8 of page 1, we're going to strike the word running and add operating or contracting. On page 1, line 12, at the very end of line 12, we're going to change the period to a comma and put or within 1/4 mile of the above. On page 1, line 16, after the word closes, we're going to add the two words on and on-site childcare. We're going to accept the red line on page 13 as well, on page 1. On line 9 of page 2, we're going to amend that to be 2.5 million. And we'll accept on line 22 the red line. Does everybody understand the changes? Okay. So we have the motion with the changes. So those will.
Thank you. Thank you for this amendment. I think on line 8, after contracting, you need to maybe say 4. There
Right.
needs to be,
Contracting.
there needs to be a preposition there.
One second.
I think that's what he said, operating or contracting.
On site.
Right,
Right,
tied
but-
to operating or contracting on-site or nearby
The
childcare
word
services.
for doesn't, I don't think it's required, but it's not
I think it's,
That's fine. We'll add
I
that
think
word.
it helps.
We'll add that word to be clarified. So again, on line 8, it'll be operating or contracting for on-site or nearby childcare services. Any further discussion?
I would second these changes. And this amendment.
All those in favor, first order of business is the committee amendment. All those in favor of adopting amendments 7, 8, 9 with the changes made by the committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the committee amendment is adopted. Now we have the bill as amended. Is there any further discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it, 3-2. I'm assuming this won't go on consent?
No.
Okay. Senator Sullivan, you'll take it out.
Yes, please.
Next item I want to take up is Senate Bill 635. I'm going to make a motion of ought to pass on Senate Bill 635,
I'll second.
and it's been seconded by Senator Sullivan. I'm going to make a motion, we adopt amendment number 596S. And I'd speak to that motion. I'd like to make 2 changes to the bill. The first is on page 2, line 12. I want to change to $10 million to $2.5 million. That will basically establish a program that at the maximum exposure, 170 businesses in the state would be able to take advantage of or ratioed based on if they're all not maximums. The next change I want to make is to actually, from Senator Sullivan, I want to take, if you look back at the previous bill we just voted on, there's the language at the end of the page for an appropriation on line 24, page 2, line 24 through 28. I would like to add that language in at the request of DRA to make the appropriation, knowing that that's a maximum, that the combination of the 2 credits may end up with a resulting, it's not going to be $80,000, it'll be a lesser amount. But they asked us for that appropriation, so I'm asking on page 2, after we add the language for the appropriation from Senate Bill 654 FN, lines 24 through 28, which is just a $40,000 appropriation.
Yes, questions, Chairman. On the process for the application and hitting the max on page 2, line 4, 6, I know in some tax credit programs, if they're oversubscribed, they do a pro rata, and this doesn't.
First come, first serve.
So one large business. you know, they're-
Well, remember, they only have a 14.7 is the maximum business, so. If all of them were large businesses, the first one to come up, it'd be 170 businesses that would get the maximum credit, and everyone after 170 would be denied the credit.
That makes sense. As I said on the previous bill, the concepts of both of these, I think are significant and worthy ideas. I know they're coming to finance, but, I do think it's responsibility of this community to give more money when the deficits. And I also think that in this one, it's just not ready. I'm not really sure that this is really ready. But it'll be in finance, but that just my apprehension at this point.
Further discussion? Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. I agree with Senator Waters. I don't think this bill is ready. But also, since it only applies to taxable periods, basically beginning 2 years from now, I think this is a bill that should get some more work and come back to be considered in the next budget.
Second. All right, so the motion on where right now we're taking up this motion about OTP with the adoption of committee amendment number 596S as amended. Is everybody clear on what the next vote is?
Just the amendment. We haven't voted on the amendment
That's it. We're voting on the amendment 596 with the various changes we made, and that run through those changes one more time. We're reducing the line 12 amount from $10 million to $2.5 million, and we're adding the appropriations language in at the end of the bill for $40,000. Everyone clear on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. We're now on ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 635. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. 3-2. And I'll take that one out. Last item of business is Senate Bill 561. I'll make a motion of ITL. Been moved and seconded, a motion of ITL. Further discussion? Senator Murphy?
I just want to say that I think this is a good bill that provides existing operators, applicants with applications pending, abilities, but not obligations. It doesn't harm anyone. It protects the existing operators that are already from having someone move in next to them. There was no opposition at the hearing, and I'm certainly a no on the IPL motion. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the ITL motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
No.
Nay.
3-2. Objection to consent?
No.
You can always pull it if you want.
You can put it on there for now.
I'll move consent. All those in favor of consent signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay.
3-2 vote.
You can still put it on consent as long as the consent vote is unanimous.
Any of us can object.
Anybody, and any one senator can pull a bill. Great.
You gonna take it out?
Sure. I'll take it out. Any further business to come before? We do have one bill pending. We're going to hold it. We're in no obligation to manage that bill until April 22nd, I believe. So we'll hold that for a while, wait and see what other House bills might come over. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, but it's moved by Senator Sullivan, seconded by Senator Roosevelt. Come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Business of the day being done. We are adjourned.